And what marks is the noble truth of origin of suffering? It is that craving which gives rise to rebirth, bound up with pleasure and lust, finding fresh delight, now here, now there. That is to say, sensual craving, craving for existence, and craving for non-existence. So, dear noble friends, there is no need for me to give an opening to this discourse. We have been discussing that for quite some time, so you know the summary of it already. But still, just to refresh what we have been discussing, we have gone through how you can be mindful of the body, how you can be mindful of the pain or the feeling, or how you can be mindful of the mind. And now we are discussing how you can be mindful of the phenomena. Even of that, we have come to the last phenomena. When you walk on the path, this is all what you will be finally achieving. What you will be achieving is the Four Noble Truths, right? The Four Noble Truths are the truth of suffering, origin of suffering, cessation of suffering, and the path. So we are on to the second one. We have discussed in the last few sessions what the noble truth of suffering is. And just to give a very brief signposting of the items included under suffering are birth, which most of us are very deluded in, that birth is not suffering, but birth is a very, very auspicious and very lucky, very fortunate thing. But we don't realize that the start of all the problem is the birth, right? So therefore, the Blessed One has identified that birth itself is the first cause of suffering. And after that, the other things follow, which is aging, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, distress, despair, association with unbeloved, separation from the loved, stress of not getting what is wanted, and in brief, 5 clinging aggregates are suffering. So this is the summary of the truth of suffering. And he doesn't stop there after giving, because it's a complaint to the Blessed One and basically to the Buddhists, that Buddhists are always talking only about suffering. That is because we want to identify the problem before we find out a solution. Identifying the problem itself is the most important thing before finding the solution. A lot of people try to find the solution without knowing the problem. Therefore, Blessed One very clearly identified the bitter truth, which is after achieving so much of pleasure, everything fades away, everything vanishes, everything depreciates, nothing waits for us, nothing we can hold on to. Therefore, we have got to keep trying to hold on to those things, and that has created suffering. So, therefore, Blessed One has gone through all the pleasurable things that are available in the lay life, worldly life, as well as to the highest in the spiritual life. After that only he realized that everything is suffering. So after identifying this suffering, he was also able to, as soon as it became a noble truth, you don't identify noble truth one by one. As soon as you accept the suffering, that acceptance itself is giving you why you have been suffering. We are suffering because of our reaction, because of our mental rejection. So what the Blessed One did was, yes, it is suffering, but you just accept that suffering I have reduced to the bare minimum after going through even the spiritual pleasures, that suffering you can bear and accept it. And once you accept that suffering, you take away the reaction, and that reaction itself has been the cause of our suffering, origin of our suffering. So that's another noble truth that he has pointed out, which we call noble truth of origin of suffering. And that origin, he has reduced it to just one word. That word is the craving. And although it is one word, that craving, you can't do anything without craving, right? So therefore, he has qualified that word. He has qualified that craving with 3 words, right? The 3 words that should be there for you to identify craving as the origin of suffering. First one, that craving should give rise to rebirth. When you crave for something, you are craving it now, again, and you keep craving. And after that, you will crave for similar thing once again, and it keeps going. So you call it gives rise to rebirth, or ono bhavika. The second qualification that the Blessed One is giving for craving to be the origin is bound up with pleasure and lust, right? It is the craving that you are looking for lust and pleasure all the time. Nandiraga sahagata. It is not just that pleasurable, you are so much into it, you are completely glued to it, and you cannot live without, right? So when you have that sort of craving, then it gives rise to a suffering, right? So if you are ready to live anywhere, do anything, eat anything, then you don't have craving that completely gives rise to pleasure and lust. You have craving just to survive, right? So therefore, another qualification that we should have for craving to become origin of suffering is bound up with pleasure and lust. The last qualification is great delight in here and there. We call it tatra tatra binandani. So no matter what, we are delighted in it. And last time the example we gave was it's like the ants going for honey. When a jar of honey is there, and if it is open, all the ants will go in there and keep sucking until their head is heavy and fall into the jar and die there itself. So they are so delighted in having honey. So it's the same way we also crave for things. We don't see them, and we don't accept, and those things have become so much part and parcel of our lives. So therefore, we don't see that we are taking great delight until such time you take few minutes to be away from them. So therefore, and if you take, say, a young person going out in the weekend, we can't tell them not to go out in the weekend, because they think that it is something that must happen in that age, right? So it's something like that. You have a great delight in going for those things, and what it simply gives is just the suffering. And it's just an example, and not only young people, and all of us are having such things, having great delight in things. And when you have these 3 things in craving, then it will be the origin of suffering. And then what mindfulness does is, when we have craving, mindfulness is just observing it. What mindfulness is teaching us is just to accept the present moment that belongs to us, that pertains to us. So if you are craving for something, the Blessed One is not asking us, that's a very bad thing, that's the origin of suffering, get rid of it. He says, don't react. If you have craving, just be aware that you have craving and be aware continuously. Be aware without any choosing, choiceless awareness. So when you do without any qualification, without any choosing, and unconditionally, and over and again, over and again, over and again, the very same thing, since you don't react to it, it's your craving to it, or you will not continue that. You will see that you have craving, and you will just accept that craving and will not go behind it. So as a result, its strength will reduce. And one good example will be when you are sitting, you may feel thirsty, and your mind will tell you are thirsty, get up and go and have some water. But you decide yourself, no, I'm not going to die. I don't get up until such time the bell goes. Or when you are walking, such things are very common, right? You feel so many times to go to the toilet. You feel so many times to go and have some drink or have a rest or have some water, right? Those are not actually that you require water. And that is how the craving is coming, just to test. So when it comes, if you just keep observing, no matter how strong it is, then its gravity, its strength reduces over and gradually. As a result, when you have some craving outside the practice, then this habit, this skill will cascade down onto it, and we will be able to see your own craving. When you go to the supermarket, you crave for one thing and you will be able to see it. And earlier, before practicing, we were not able to see the craving. We see something and we grab, and only once you pay the bill, you have bought so many things that you don't want, right? But now we have the ability, not that the craving goes away, we have the ability to see it, and therefore we will not get flooded with the craving thoughts, and we will not get carried away with it. The craving will not be able to take us for a ride, right? So that is what the mindfulness is doing. It's challenging all these three conditions. The three conditions is that gives rise to birth, because it doesn't continue. You just see the craving instead of asking, instead of doing what the craving is asking you to do. So it doesn't give rise to the next birth, say for example, picking it from the shelf, right? You are not bound with the pleasure and lust that is suggested by your mind, and simply observe it. And then you see the great delight that the mind is trying to throw upon you. So those challenges will gradually change your attitude towards the way we act, towards the way we talk, towards the way we finally think, right? So then, in that manner, the craving will gradually reduce. So that's what we have been discussing in the last few sessions, especially the craving part, or craving part in the last session. And then in the same stanza that I selected, the Blessed One says, that is to say, sensual craving, craving for existence, and craving for non-existence. So in other words, he's giving three types of craving. The first one is the sensual craving, and the craving for existence, and craving for non-existence is the last. And I'm going to take the first one today, which is the sensual craving. And it is fairly easily understood from the word itself. It's the craving for the satisfaction of our sense bases, which is called the sense faculties, and that is the sensual craving. And for sensual craving to continue, or for us to have sensual, to satisfy the sensual craving, we should have our sense faculties. And at the same time, the corresponding sense object should also be there. Since we have the eye, we should have the object that the eye can get in touch with, right? So we call it form. Similarly, ear should have sounds, and nose should have aromas, and tongue should have tastes. Body should have tangibles or the contacts, and the mind should have mind objects, basically thoughts, etc. So those are the eye, ear, nose, etc. are called internal sense bases, sense faculties, and the others are called in general external objects. So when these external objects and the internal sense faculties are met, we have discussed in the past, what happens is that particular consciousness arises. When the eye meets a form, eye consciousness arises. And ear meets a sound, then you don't have ear consciousness, or rather eye consciousness, you have ear consciousness instead, right? And similarly, for the nose, having aroma will create nose consciousness, tongue with the taste, and body with the tangibles, and the mind with the mind object, a respective consciousness will arise. So once that arises, when these three things happen, then it completes the job. Then you see, that is called eye contact. And then you hear, if it is ear, then you have ear contact, right? And if it is nose with aroma and nose consciousness, that contact is called tasting. Oh, I'm sorry, smelling. And similarly, tongue with taste, and the tongue consciousness is tasting, and likewise, right? So the funny thing is, ear can't get forms what the eye can do. It can't get any aromas. It can't get any taste. It can't get any bodily contact. It can't have mind objects. Similarly, the eye cannot hear, cannot taste, cannot smell, cannot have bodily contact, cannot have mind object. So therefore, the function of each of these things will be different, and that function is completed only when the internal faculty, external faculty, consciousness come together, right? And then with the contact, the feeling arises, and with the feeling, the perception arises, and then the mental volitions, etc. will continue. The 12 dependent originations will go on. And that is how things will be continuing. And that is how it will go to the stage of birth. And this gives rise to this gives rise to this gives rise to this. And it continues until birth, or this happening itself is a new birth of something that our sense faculties have taken. So that process takes place, and with that process, we will have, when it is having with our internal faculties and connected with the internal faculties, and we will have the sensual craving. And Buddha also explained where this actually arises, where does craving arise and establish, because it's naturally in the internal faculties, but internal faculties craving will not arise just because you have internal faculties. When you look at, suppose, for example, you may be looking at the computer, right? Why are you looking at the computer? Is that the only thing that you have to see? And you may be listening to what I am telling you, the sounds coming from me. But is that the only sound you have now? Why you have attention only to the computer and only to the sound that comes from the computer? And that is the question. And that is because there is that, if I may call it, although it is not really craving, if I may call it that it is craving, why you have that is, comparatively, you have some agreeable situation coming from the computer and pleasurable thing coming from the computer compared to what other things that you have around, what other sounds that you have around, right? So we call it piya rupang sata rupang, which means where there is agreeable, where there is pleasurable thing, then the craving will establish on that. Craving will arise on that. So it is not everything that the eye will have. Say, for example, in a big crowd, you see your best friend. So your attention will definitely go to that. Or you will see your worst enemy. Your attention will directly go to that, because it is based on agreeable and pleasurable. Definitely the enemy is not the agreeable thing or the pleasurable thing, but because you have agreeable situation, because you have a pleasurable situation, and that person will be at the other end of that line. So therefore, the attention will directly go to that person, and you will try to take your attention away from him, right? So therefore, the craving arises not just because you have the internal faculties and external faculties and the process going on, and it also has another mental attitude, which we call the expectation of agreeable and pleasurable situations. So when we talk about this agreeable and pleasurable situation, one may think this is very obvious and this is very common, and what is wrong with it? Because that is what even the pauper and the king does. It is common, it is true for each and every living being on the universe, no matter what your status is, right? And it is the aim of, therefore, our education. And that is why we are building a lot of asset portfolios. And that is why we get married and have kids and do so many things, because we are after agreeable situations and pleasurable situations. And for the same reason, when we take developed countries, they are having wars to get more agreeable and pleasurable things, because there is some section of the society that they are not agreeing with, So they need to have an agreeable situation. So only thing they therefore know is, because of that craving, get rid of which is not agreeable, which is not pleasurable. So to do that, we will be every day without a rest, look for quicker and effective and efficient way of doing it, efficient way of having agreeable and pleasurable things. And therefore, innovation is the slogan in the current society. And if there is innovation and if you find new thing, then you go to the top of the ladder. And because especially Christian myself is old enough to know what we had when we were young or when we were small. And the things that we have today, we never dreamt of. And those things have come up simply because people were looking for more and more agreeable situations, more and more pleasurable situations. And that has given rise to innovations, continuous innovation. When Chatu comes to our age, and you will know that the things that we can't think of today will be there after another 20, 30 years. Right? And we are taking now, how many hours? We are taking 1 hour to fly to Sydney, say 1 hour and few minutes, right? But there is a talk, it seems, that they are going to have a bullet train, which goes in 1 hour to Sydney. So things might be very different. So that is because we are after pleasurable and agreeable, and keep on looking for new ways. And once you find something, it is not only the future, the history will be talking about only the pleasurable and agreeable that we have generated and created, and people relating to them will be history. And they will be very highly regarded for generations. And and if I take the list, this list will never end. The things that we do for our for seeking pleasurable and agreeable. Now, this I have spoken about mainly with an outward attention, right? But if you take fairly inward, rather not inward, with your close family, and for husband, wife is very precious asset. And you can't, for everything else, you can give a price. And whatever you innovate, whatever new thing that you have, and whatever thing that you see here, you can buy it, you can give a price. But when it comes to our relationships, and it will be very difficult, but still, we are from them, we are looking pleasure and agreeing only. And similarly, the wife to husband, and kids for parents, and parents for kids, right? And brothers and sisters, siblings, again the list goes on. And even from them, we are expecting agreeable and pleasurable situations only. Searching for agreeable and pleasurable is therefore very universal. And it is not only the human beings, each and every animal is looking for a pleasure and agreeing situation. So therefore, in the animal world, they also fight, they also have wars for their territory, for their partners, and for their food. So therefore, it is not just human beings; it is universal. But again, even among human beings, there is no discrimination between religions, ethnicities, caste, countries, color, gender, age, wealth. Nothing counts when it comes to the satisfaction of agreeables and pleasurables. All want the same thing. We are so common in that regard. Craving is a common denominator of the living beings. Right? So therefore, that is why Buddha has selected that as the first thing that people are bound in. So in general, this is the nature of the worldly beings. That is why we call them worldly beings, and ordinary people we call. And so we are taught, because we are going only for agreeables and pleasurables, we are taught only additions and multiplications. Because if we give, if we reduce, and if you divide, we can't have more and more agreeable, more and more pleasurable, if we divide. So therefore, we do whatever is possible to increase our portion. And this is why United States was very cunning, I should say, not clever, to make their currency the world federal currency. As a result, everyone is badly hooked. Everyone is badly soaked now. And then people are looking for ways to come out of it. Different countries are now, Europe has already done it. And the other countries are trying to do it now, because only thing that human beings will try to do is additions and multiplications. And we are caught in it. We are very badly caught in it. Initially, we thought this is the best way forward, and then we have followed it. Ultimately, we know the soup we fall into. Then only we realize that we have gone behind the wrong thing. So this is why we have that simile. What simile? The simile of ants falling into the honey pot. So initially it was so sweet and so what do you call, genius idea. But after the guys who have done it have died and gone away long time ago, now those who never was part of it is in soup. Those who created this mess are no longer there, right? So this is what is happening to those ants as well. So even finding a new currency is not the answer, because it's another honeypot, and we will find out that we are in that pot after another long time. So therefore, the Blessed One says, understand that all what we do is to satisfy our senses. So that is craving, and just be aware of it. But it's very difficult for us, for those who are in sensual craving, to understand. Sensual craving can be taught only to people like you two. If you go to Forest Lake supermarket and put up a small stage and give a talk about craving, just imagine how many rotten eggs will be on your head, right? They will just throw rotten eggs at you, rotten vegetables at you. That may be the best if that only happens, right? So people will just chase us if we go to the sensual world and tell them that you have sensual craving. In fact, we can't understand that we have sensual craving so long as we are in it. to understand sensual craving, we will have to come out. We should have some urge to get out of our house and come to an empty place and see how our mind is going towards this sensuality, right? So to give another example of our craving, unsatisfied craving, say for example, when you go to supermarket, you have seen freezers full of frozen food, especially the chicken may have been in the freezer longer than it actually lived. Right? They just keep piling up, and somebody was saying the same chicken may be in the same freezer twice, because it will be for more than 3 months, because the animal will be killed after so many months, but that chicken will be there in the freezer together. So our additions and multiplications have gone to that extent, and we just keep piling things up. So to do all that, we need a system, we need theories. So therefore, present day, what has happened is the corruption is legitimized by fancy terms and fancy ways. That's all what has happened. And some of the funny such terms are open economy. Open economy is how you can manipulate the unable by the able. Nothing but it's just manipulation of people, right? And another term is demand and supply, which is again part of the open economy. And the other one is the theory of marginal cost equals marginal revenue. And they say that is the best way to produce. If the cost for production of one unit is equivalent to the revenue you get selling that unit, and you will have to continue producing until your cost is equivalent to marginal cost is equivalent to marginal revenue. And therefore, what you do is you try to keep producing as much as possible on one hand, and on the other hand, you try to keep your cost at lowest. And to do that, you will have to pay the suppliers, you will have to pay the labor as less as possible. So you crush them. And on the other hand, you squeeze blood from the customer, and so that your revenue will be high. So these are the real corruption, manipulations that has been legitimized, and people who have found those things have been given Nobel prizes, and all that now is going reverse. We can see what is happening in the world today. It's nothing but going behind agreeable and pleasurable, going behind craving. And another thing is the foreign aid and foreign assistance. That's again another corruption. That is how the wealthy countries control other countries. It may it be China, may it be Western world. It's the same thing that is happening. China is investing in all the other poorer countries, not for the benefit of the poorer countries. And it is manipulation, and all behind craving. And all those, there are so many fancy terms that legitimizes the corruption in the world. And the result of sensual craving, after doing all that, what we will have is seeing, what we will have is hearing, what we will have is associations and grouping and things like that. So this seeing is so powerful, because the eye is so powerful, and so therefore to support all other faculties, we need the eye. Say, for example, if you want, if someone wants to listen to a song, they don't just listen to the soundtrack. They need all visual. And you may have, definitely you see the voice and AGT, that GT, this GT and all that are there. Australia got talent, America got talent, Britain got talent and all that. And it maybe, say, for example, a song. It's not just the song, and they're showing so many things, and it has been so beautified. When you get there, you are really confused whether you are listening or whether you are seeing. Right? To support listening, we will have to satisfy the eye faculty. Unless the eye faculty is satisfied, the attention is not going there. Similarly, when you go for food, see how beautiful the foods are arranged in the shelves. And when you go to a restaurant, see how beautiful the plate is presented. Right? But when we were small, I remember, we can't at least go into the shop. You'll have to go to the counter and tell, I want this, I want this, I want that. And he will give whatever he gives, we will have to pay and bring it home. But now it is not like that. To attract our attention, they are arranging it in such a beautiful way. So for every other faculty, eye is so important. So the seeing is doing a huge part in sensual craving. So seeing extend to, therefore, not just still photography, it goes even to video memory catching. So you will have to record everything and keep, and after you retire, Chatu, you will have to do that. You can take all those things and watch again. Right? So that is how satisfying the eye is. And not only that, even we do it, we put it into YouTube and Facebook so that a lot of people can see. And even we can see whenever we want. So our evolution has positioned the eye. Therefore, since it is, because of its significance, very as close as possible to the brain, it can therefore very quickly pass the signal to the brain, and therefore the eye has become so dominant in dominating all the faculties. So therefore, the appearance is the key to the sensual world. As a result, cosmetic industry is thriving, or rather, cosmetic industry is thriving, and gyms are opening every 10 kilometers, and beauty parlors are there, at least 2 or 3, even in a small shopping center, because the appearance has become so important to impress our eye. And then comes the hearing, then comes the tongue, nose, body, and then comes the association, etc., etc. So in this manner, our sensual craving has overwhelmed us. But the important thing is, there are few people who are ready to take few hours of their life, days, months, years, away from the sensual craving. And it's a miracle. In a world that is driven only by the sense pleasure, and only that you have is sensuality, still there are few people who see, who understand that there is something beyond that. So it is unthinkable for the ordinary worldly beings. So this group is therefore, in that sense, is a very, very special group. And you ensure every week, this day, this time is set for it. And it cannot be, if you may have discussed these things definitely with so many friends and people that you know, you yourself has experienced the resistance that you get from them. That is because they are not special. That is because, I'm sorry to say, there is no difference between them and the other animals. Because we do the same thing that the animals are doing, unless we try to see that there is a world other than sensuality. Forget about spirituality. There is a world beyond sense faculty. And we have, to some extent, felt it, and we are striving towards it. So therefore, this group is very special. So when one is away from the sense pleasure, people revere such people and respect them and worship. The Blessed One is not living today, but still, after 2,600 years, they still worship him, right? So therefore, that is because, and those who are worshipping are not the ones who walk on the path. Even the people in the sensual world come and worship because they know it is so difficult. So on Saturday, this temple is, the temple where you are is full. But today, only so many people are there. Why they come on Saturday is because a lot of sensuality on Saturday. And they come and worship and go because they know it is very difficult for them to do it. So there is someone who has done it. They will worship him for doing it. But we can't do it and we go bye-bye. And so hope this talk has given some insight into the gravity of the sensual craving, and may this talk help you to understand the sensual craving and be mindful about it. May you be happy, healthy, and peaceful. Blessings of the Noble Triple Joy.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you.
Everyone, Saranai. All right. Any points to discuss?
You shared a lot of information, and I think that it's a really difficult time for, particularly for young people, but anyone that's not looking for self-awareness, because our politicians are corrupt, particularly because to even get into that position, they've had to be doing all sorts of corrupt things to be accepted by their party to get into that position. And we just look at our homelessness and what's happening in our society. So there's that power aspect, as well as social media and all of the, image things. The technology is just there in an instant for them. So it's a very difficult time.
It's very, very, very difficult to come out because it's entangled everywhere. It's very difficult to unentangle, if there is a word like that at least. And the reason is nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to take the lead, right? And people will be happy with craving, and therefore it is very easy for everybody to sell craving. But if definitely, I'm sure, if our leaders really want it, they can gradually take it, and they definitely know that being mindful is the way, but they are very reluctant to take it up. Very reluctant, because I think UK has been declared as the mindful nation, but they are wasting time on research on mindfulness. They don't know that there are already people living mindfully, and it doesn't require any research. It requires research only because the person trying to teach is not happy himself. If someone is happy about mindfulness himself, then he definitely knows how to tell it to the other people.
But
And
if they're there for power, then they don't want people to have mindfulness because that would go against their power gathering.
yeah, that's the thing. So they definitely, they somehow or other want to keep their power rather than the happiness of people. Chatu?
I'll give a report. It's been a while. Can you hear?
Yeah.
Where should I start? My practice in general has been much less. I try to do in the morning much less hours. I just do whenever I can. So it's not a big deal anymore. When you were here, let's say a couple of months ago, or a long time ago.
I was not there a couple of months ago.
I can't remember when. So like I had very good motivation in the sense that because I always had to come and report. So then I was like very diligent in my practice in terms of like being aware, and I was very, let's say, on point of what I was doing. And then what I found was, what I think happened was, I got really relaxed because you're not here, so I'm not accountable. So I'm just doing whatever I want in my sitting and walking. So I thought, okay, but because the reason why I felt that was because I was having some experiences and they weren't really happening. So I thought, okay, this is probably because all I do is just do nothing when the walking and sitting happens. But the last instruction that you gave me was to be aware, to make sure, keep reminding myself to be aware while I'm doing walking and sitting. It's a very simple instruction, but I also forgot it. So I'm just doing whatever I do, not particularly prioritizing being aware. So I started doing it, prioritizing being aware again. And some of those experiences happened again. And I guess the one that happens is, so I will be in this space, walking or sitting, and then I prioritize, let's say, being aware, and then I go to a place where there's more knowing than the space. The question I have is, there's not much signposts in that area, so like I have some doubts if it's actually happening, where I conceptualize that I'm in a place where I know more than the space, or that I'm making it up. So I guess my question is, it really made sense, my report. Can it be hard to verify that you're in a place where you know?
Okay. Yeah. Yes. What you mentioned is normal, is usual. And did you say no signposts when you go to space and the knowing?
Yeah, so like if I give you the example of the signpost, like
yeah,
sometimes the signpost will be like and getting well, the very first time it ever happened was something popped, like a bubble popped, and I knew this has happened. So it was very like apparent something happened. But now I'm like, I think I know, but I'm not sure. It could be conceptualized.
Yeah. Okay, makes sense. Yeah, no, what you say is right, because our verifications have all this time been based on our sense faculties. Now, this is a situation from the time you start talking about space, right? You are not with your body. So since you are not with your body, you don't have the usual verification tools, right? So it is just the mindfulness or the continuation of mindfulness that is there, and mind is suggesting that this may not be the right path. If that is the suggestion that the mind is giving, that is because mind doesn't want to be there. If the mind wants to be there, and then it will not doubt it. It will somehow or other crave for it and try to keep there as long as possible, right? And you will be delighted in being there. The reason why you have a doubt is because the mind is not having any hold. So therefore it is doubting and trying to push you towards creating a perception, or trying to push you towards making intentional thing, or to do some mental volition. So if you do some mental volition or create some perception, then what happens is you involve yourself in the scenario. Do you follow what I mean?
Yes.
So therefore, mind is what do you call pondering this doubt. How do you verify? Aren't you making it up? Aren't you conceptualizing? No. This is what is exactly happening when you're out of your self-faculty. So it's just the mere knowing, and you can't verify it. Only thing that you can verify is if you can do it over and over again. If it happens over and over again, then it is not conceptualization. It is the path that the mind is, that mindfulness is taking. So keep on doing the same thing. And very frequently, if you are able to reach there, then it is working. And when the mind is suggesting whether it is conceptualizing, or whether you're making it up, or whether you want to verify, just be aware of that as well. Now, with those thoughts, it has been, to some extent, the mind has been successful to put a barrier for the continuation of the knowing, because you started, pondering this idea a little bit, right? So that is why you raised the question. But if you were mindful even to that, then it will also be blasted away, and you will be able to be with the knowing, right? So it is very important that you are in the knowing, and you know that you are in the knowing. Does it make sense?
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. All right. So if there are no other comments, suggestions, criticisms, we can transfer merits, share the positive energies with the rest of the beings in the universe. And for that, we can chant the usual stanzas that we are chanting, with the blessings for all those who organize, all those who participate, and all those who help us, no matter whether they are near or far, human or non-human. May all the beings share these positive energies, and with that intention in our mind, we will chant the traditional stanzas.